Corin, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and be with you and be with the Storytellers group. Without any fanfare, I'd like to begin and tell you a story about someone who grew up not really knowing much about what he wanted to do. And this young man kind of floated along through elementary school and high school without really knowing much about what he wanted to do. It turns out, however, when he graduated from high school, he only applied for admission to one college, and that was the University of Georgia. Well, at that point in time, because this has been several years ago, the admission standards for the University of Georgia are not as stringent as they are today. And this young man was fortunate enough to be admitted into the University of Georgia, although he really wasn't sure exactly why he was going to the University of Georgia or what he hoped to accomplish there. It ends up that this young man went and made new friends, decided at that point in time, and I'll have to say that something drew this young man into the idea of going out for a fraternity rush. It was kind of the thing that everybody else was doing, or at least so it seemed to this young man. And fraternity rush was talked about and thought about, but again, without too much forethought, this young man found himself going through the fraternity rush system. And over several days or weeks, it ended up that he ended up getting a bid from a fraternity and joining that fraternity. And that was a significant turning point for this young man, because he made new friends. He was subjected to a lot of new situations and learned a lot of things about a lot of people and went to a lot of parties. But as a result of learning about new friends and making new friends and having a lot of fun, although he had done reasonably well with his grades in his freshman year, after he pledged to this fraternity in the beginning of his second year, his grades began to suffer. And suffer they did, to the point that the university summoned this young man and his parents into the office of the registrar and advised the family that the GPA of this young man had descended to a point where it was less than 1/10 of a point above where there was an automatic permanent expulsion. But the registrar explained that because it was 1/10 of a point above automatic permanent expulsion, he could, if he wished, go home, get his act together, think about it, and would be readmitted without further exam or whatever. Or he could choose to stay at the university and do better and pull his GPA up. But if he failed to do that and dropped 1/10 of a point, he'd be at this automatic permanent expulsion. Well, this young man thought for a couple of minutes about it at any rate, and decided that he would like to stay on for an additional quarter. But his parents felt otherwise and thought that it would be smarter if this young man came home and thought about education and kind of got his act together of what he wanted to do. Well, that was a decision that was enacted, and so this young man came back home and began to look for employment and found work at a local filling station. We used to call those service stations, but this is where there would be an attendant that would actually come out to the car when you pulled in and ask what you wanted, and if you said gas, they would actually put the gas in your car, and while the gas was going in the car, the attendant would open the hood and check the oil and wash the windshield and this, that, or the other, and bring your ticket to you when the gasoline was full, the tank was full, or whatever, and you would drive off. So this young man found work at a filling station and began to work there and was pretty happy with working at a gas station. No future, no worries, small paycheck, but he was getting along pretty well, reasonably well with that. But then he got a letter in the mail. And the letter was addressed to this young man, and it was from the Selective Service System. And it said to this young man, we understand that you're no longer enrolled in school at the University of Georgia. Where are you enrolled in school now? Having a penchant toward honesty, this young man sent the postcard back in and said he was not enrolled in school, that he was actively working as a gas station. And that had the effect of, a short time later, getting another postcard from the Selective Service System that asked this young man whether or not he had any dependents, children, spouse, to which, with a penchant toward honesty, he replied, no, it was just him. Well, several weeks later, got another postcard that said, what sort of physical shape are you in? And you got any kind of disability or anything like that? And again, with a penchant toward honesty, he filled out the card and sent it back and said, no, in reasonably good shape. Thank you very much for asking. And a short time thereafter, there was another postcard that said, we've decided we would like to check you out and see what kind of physical shape you're in. So we want you to report to the exam station in Atlanta and learn, so we can learn a little bit more about you and what kind of physical shape you're in. And this young man began to see a picture evolving because this was about 1968. And if anybody can remember what was going on in 1968, the Vietnam War was going hot and heavy. It had kind of intensified since 1964 approximately, and by 1968 it was really going, and a lot of people were going to Vietnam. So this young man decided, this isn't looking so good. I think I'm fixing to get drafted. I better see what options there are out there. So this young man began to try to find options of what he could do. And this young man ended up going into a Army recruiter station and being advised that yes, that if he was drafted, it would be a 2-year commitment, but that the Army would determine what they wanted to do with you during that 2-year period. But there was an option, and that if you would volunteer for an extra year, 3-year commitment, you could select an MOS that appealed to you. And they would guarantee that you would go to that school for that MOS. Couldn't guarantee you would serve in that, but guarantee you'd have the training. And so this young man began to look at the row of pamphlets about different MOS and found one for a helicopter pilot, and inquired of the recruiter about this. Oh, he said, no, I can't guarantee you that. You've got to go to Atlanta and take a test and see if you have got flight aptitude and pass a flight physical exam in addition. So can't offer you that unless you go to Atlanta and take those tests. So to make a long story short, this young man decided, well, at least I'll go and take the test and see what happens. And so went, took the test, and was advised that in fact he had passed the flight aptitude test and the flight physical test. So the recruiter back home told this young man, said, well, can I sign you up? And the young man said no, he wanted to think about it a while longer. It was a big decision, an extra year of time and this, that, or the other. So this young man went home and talked to his mother and dad again, and about whether or not he should just wait, get drafted, serve 2 years, but we probably know that's going to mean being in the infantry in Vietnam, or trying to volunteer and go in for 3 years and try to go to helicopter school and get through flight training and that. So there was a pause, and the father told this young man that I believe I'd just let them draft you. Because he said, you've never finished anything. And why do you think you can finish flight school? Well, this young man took that as a challenge and left, drove back down to the recruiter station, said, sign me up. This young man was inducted into the military, went through basic training, and then, true to their word, was sent to flight school. Managed to get through primary flight school, learned to fly a helicopter, and then went on to secondary flight school, where he learned to fly a UH-1, more affectionately known as a Huey helicopter. Learned about formation flying. Was commissioned as a warrant officer, and then applied for and was accepted into transition school, where he learned to fly a AH-1G Cobra helicopter, a gunship. Then this young man was trying to wait with eager anticipation as to what his first duty station was going to be with this helicopter training that he had received. But he really was not too surprised to learn that he was being dispatched to Vietnam. So he went to Vietnam, and he spent about 12 months in country. Had many harrowing experiences, but learned a lot of life's lessons, and came back home with a different attitude than he had had when he left. But he always wondered whether his father's advice, as harsh as it was at the time, had been designed, calculated to have the exact opposite effect. that he was articulating in his advice. If I were you, I'd just wait and let them draft you. Or you've never finished anything in your life. Why do you think you could get through flight school? I'll tell you some more about that young man later.